first and foremost, is a 501c3. So you might be asking me, wow, why are you up here asking for money? Because there's actually another arm to the Autism Resource Project that we want to build out, and there is some correlation between the two. And there is a world where you can have a nonprofit organization and a for-profit arm, and that's what we've secured for the Autism Resource Project. But I want to share with you some information about the market and what the opportunities are. So the marketplace as a whole, $9 billion in 2023. The sales of products designed for physical and mental accommodations just in the state of California. It's over $100 billion worth of sales in the United States alone. So, and to be honest with you, I haven't really done a lot of research into the international market opportunities, but it's probably big. Podcast, we have a very successful podcast. We want to grow that podcast. Advertising revenues from podcast in 2023, 1.9 billion. 2.6 billion is the anticipated value of that by 2026. The global market as a whole for podcast revenues, sales and advertising is in the $24 billion range for 2023. Did I lose that? It's forecasted to be 132 billion by 2032 with a 21% CAGR. In the field of training, educator training in particular, it's an $18 billion industry annually in 2023 in the United States. E-learning in the United States reached 316.2 billion in 2023. And according to the Institute for Multisensory Education, a study found that students generally benefited from a 21% increase in education and retention when they were taught by teachers who had some form of advanced training in these regards. From a community standpoint, some of the most popular jobs held by people in the autistic and neurodivergent communities are computer programmers, lab technicians, and data analysts. The world of data analysts represents about 23% of an increase in employment for the autistic community in the last few years, and it's anticipated to grow significantly between 2022 and 2032. And that's actually interesting because the demand for data analyst positions in the United States, actually globally, is higher than there are people to fill those positions. So there's a terrific opportunity, and as part of our community pillar with Autism Resource Project, it is to build out this job community board nationally and eventually internationally. Our ask is really in the first year, not a whole lot of money because it's a lot of administrative work. There's a lot of build out of the website, integrations of technology. We want to have that marketplace up on our website, and there's a lot of third-party costs associated with that. Then there's the effort of building strategic partnerships and finding opportunities for advertising partners for the podcast. So it's about 350,000 to 400,000 for the first year. And for the second year, we ramp it up to about 1.5 million. And the reason for that is related to curriculum development. So we're going to be working with a significant number of people from an educator curriculum development standpoint. We have podcast production development costs, hiring of trainers and educators across the United States, and then the job portal development build out with hopefully a good partner like I don't know, Indeed or something along those lines. So that is what I got.
Okay. And just to elaborate on that a little bit, the pillars that Chris was talking about, we're going to have four main pillars. We're going to have the podcast. We're going to have a marketplace that's strictly geared for the neurodivergent and disabled community. We're going to have a library, hard to find articles, white papers, resource materials, guides, webinars, so forth. And we're also going to have a community network, if you will, that gives people the ability to connect and exchange information in real time, as well as a global calendar of events, conferences, happenings, resources, so forth. Initially, I should say, we're going to focus here in the US and service the tens of millions of individuals and families that can benefit by what we are doing here. Eventually, we're going to be reaching out to the global population that represents 1 billion neurodivergent and disabled individuals. And additionally to that, their caretakers, spouses, parents, families, and so forth. If you want to basically look at the statistics of the size of this market, we are talking about 1 in 30 newly diagnosed with autism every year, just here in the United States. Throw in the other neurodivergent diagnoses and physical disabilities, you're probably inching down more 1 in 20, which is why I refer to tens of millions of people here in the US alone. Extrapolate that to a global population, and you're talking about between 75 and 80 million diagnosed with autism, just those who are diagnosed. Many go undiagnosed. Again, throw everything else into the mix, you're talking about at least 1 billion people plus. So we are creating a first of its kind, and I want to emphasize that because to date it does not exist. A first of its kind, comprehensive, one-stop, if you will, resource hub for the neurodivergent and disabled community. A network that will expand here in the United States and eventually globally. So, and again, we are here talking about mental health. And I want to emphasize that you're pushing really 100% virtually of individuals and families that are in this community, neurodivergent and disabled community, that experience frustration, anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation to some level. And I'm not just talking about the individuals themselves, I'm talking about their parents, their spouses, their caregivers, their families. And what has been shown to mitigate that to a great degree, if not eliminate it completely, is access to the needed resources, information, and data that is needed to provide the ability for these people to thrive. And
the community network, the ability to engage and interact with others that are faced with the same, sort of realities. And that really doesn't exist today. You might find a Facebook support group here and there, which is fantastic, and they do really great. And there's some organizations out there that are doing fantastic things from a community standpoint. But our goal is to bring that, on a broader level, on a broader scale. The podcast is a point of growth that allows us to talk about all of these different things, but the different pillars of marketplace and the library and the community, they all kind of are synergetically connected to each other, because you might be in community and find out about a product or a service or a job, or you might be listening to the podcast and you might find that there's a support group out there that helps people find dates within the autistic community, like literally dating support groups in the autistic community. And so the whole idea is to have this synergy kind of working together. And so
we will have a very robust search feature that will cross connect the various aspects of the site. And
questions?
Well,
questions.
Oh, do you want to add something? When you look for a thingamajiggy, you go to Amazon now because it has everything, right? For the community at large. When you're looking for a service, a product, a support for the neurodivergent or disabled community, we want people to know that they can come to ARP. They can come to the Autism Resource Project and they can find it easily, it's accessible, and that parent that gets that first diagnosis and has the deer in the headlights stare and doesn't know where to go, what to do, will have a place to feel resourced, understood, and know that they're not alone.
Questions?
Fantastic presentation. I'm also working in the space as well, but in terms of the network and the community, it's a very important part, knowing that you're not alone. But how do you plan on moderating that community to make sure there's not misinformation, disinformation?
Absolutely. That is something we've already discussed. And once that is implemented, that will be moderated on a 24/7 basis.
Yeah. Is your question how?
How?
Yeah. There's that's the $64 million question. I think there are a lot of different groups like that are being moderated today. Some better than others. So it's part of um, our our effort is to really kind of go out and find those different, I guess, best practices in that regard. So to answer your question, there's not a specific path for that yet, but it's definitely one of our major concerns.
Well, we've been discussing both assigning one or more people to that task specifically, but also, of course, incorporating AI. And we've been talking to various programmers and specialists that AI is their forte, and they feel that in between the two things, we can very successfully moderate that.
Any last question?
I hope that answers.
All right, ARP, thank you very
All right,
much.